Wherever you call home, we are there. In favorite places, large spaces, for many homes, we have coverage that fits the way you live. And with our home systems protection, you can cover major home appliances and more. We cover more type of homes than ever. Get the coverage you and your family deserves. For a free no obligation quote, visit us online or simply give us a call.
We're back at you and gloves off. And today I got a great friend of mine from Australia. We're going to be talking about security, executive protection, being a bouncer, being just taking care of people. I'm with Paolo Cariello.
Thank you for the invite.
Dear to my heart. How we doing, my brother? You doing good?
Good. It's been a rough last year with lots of violence in my state. I'm not going to get into the politics, but it's a lot of people who should be being arrested are not being arrested, or they're being bailed straight away. So, like, the main issues lately we've had is lots of knife, machete violence, and lots of gang activity. Well, it's more like the young gang activity. Under 16s don't get charged lately. They're now planning on changing the laws. And the bail condition is just too easy. Someone will stab someone and then be out on bail 2 hours later. Right. So the violence has gotten pretty hectic. And also, a lot of people don't understand there's consequences to their actions.
Absolutely.
Other than the fact that I don't really, I've had people take swings at me and go like, "Oh, you can't touch me." I'm going like, "No, they go, "Oh, I have rights." I go, "Your rights ends at the point where my rights begin." So if I'm standing minding my own business and you take a swing at me, there's no law that says I can't touch you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and you said something real quick. You said something that's very important real quickly, and that is your rights stop when my rights begin.
exactly.
And that is true. In today's world, I'm seeing a lot of violence from youngsters, especially here. I live in Texas, and we live on the Mexican border. You start seeing a lot more 15, 16-year-olds crossing the border patrol stations or trying to go up north towards the other cities, because I'm South Texas. So they're going to the other cities to take drugs and to take human trafficking, and they're placing younger and younger crowd and thinking that yes, there's laws for juveniles, but they don't understand the consequences. But
Exactly.
there's a difference between doing a crime and doing a violent crime, and you've been a specialist at that. And let's go back to the first time you experienced when you had to take care of somebody, or you were placed in a situation that you had to take care of business.
Well, professionally or unprofessionally. Look, I had a rough upbringing, so I ran with a gang. So and this is the thing, you didn't just do the gang stuff because you wanted to be tough. It was groups protecting themselves. Every culture has had to do it once they moved to a different country. The Vietnamese did when they came here. Now, we used to have a running joke when we had the Asian nights at clubs, that the joke was, we went to a fight and a party broke out because those nights used to be violent. And the reason there was lots of violence was because people, especially when you come to a new country, at some point you do get picked on by people who've been here before, and it's not actual racism. It's just you want to protect what you've built so far. Right.
Absolutely.
So as soon as you see anyone coming in, there's a thing. And the thing is, I think currently in Mexico, they're protesting against white people going down to Mexico because they're gentrifying the area and changing things. So it's not what I'd call a racist thing. It's more people trying to protect their own sort of thing, good, bad, or indifferent. Then slowly, as the groups integrate, things change. But you had a lot of, like, for example, when the Chinese came, when the Italians came, when the Greeks, when the Viets came, it was someone would come knocking on their door to cause trouble, and there's consequences, right? So the same thing happened with, like, there was lots of violence in the Asian community, which now has kind of disappeared. Mainly because, like, they've cemented themselves into society, that they're blending in, and now, like, the grandkids are going to university, and you got to remember they came from a war-torn country, right? And, like, they built something, and of course, while they're building, there's always the struggle. So of course, you have to be tougher. Now the generation now, they're, a lot of the Viets and the Vietnamese and the Asian community are in university. They're buying Louis Vuitton. They've got disposable money. So when you go to Korea, for example, an Asian night, the violence doesn't exist anymore, right? Other communities are now doing the violence, but some of like, for example, we have the African community, and unfortunately, they're doing violence to themselves. Like, it's like they, instead of, like, fighting and fighting, call it racism, they're fighting amongst themselves when, like, this, you don't need to fight. But yeah, so for I started, as I said back in the day, it was basically protection, or else you got picked on if you didn't weren't able to handle yourself. Um, then I actually went into the professional security. In fact, my first security gig was working, sorry, for BB King. He did a show here, and I did crowd control work. And then, back in the day, celebrities didn't necessarily do the bodyguard thing, and he was, like, very cool and chill. But the crowd, like back in the day, the blues crowd was a rough crowd. They were like, they came from, working class. And so, like, it was, if you were telling them to settle down and drinking, they'd take a swing, but they also understood they were going to get swung back at, right? Whereas now people will take a swing and think there's no, like, oh, you can't touch me. I'm allowed to hit you, but you're not allowed to hit me. I'm allowed to stab you, but you're not allowed to stab me back. Or, you've just got to, take it. And the ridiculousness, as I said, is because of the lack of consequences. You know,
You're
uh,
absolutely correct, and you see that now, and you see the lack of consequences. You see, there's laws here in Texas that have been changing. Number one, a couple of years ago, brass knuckles is legal to have. So you start seeing a lot of people trying to use brass knuckles on somebody, but they said, yeah, they're legal. But yes, but if you use it against somebody else, it's still a deadly weapon.
yeah,
So people,
exactly.
so you
Now,
have
see,
incidents of that nature.
here in the state that I am, the ridiculous bit is, like, the wording of the law. Anything the police deem a weapon it would be considered a weapon. So, for example, if I'm in a fight and I hit them with this ring, which is my family ring, and the police go like, "Oh, that's a weapon," they'll claim it as a weapon, right? But at the same time, like, they just recently did a ban on machetes because there's been lots of machete violence, especially with teenage gangs. The thing is, it's not the ban. Like, I'm sorry, banning the weapon's not the problem. The problem is if you arrest the guy using the machete and he's out on bail 2 hours later, and then he's committing another crime. That's the problem.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. We have that here. We have that here. I think it's kind of like lay back. Here we call it they're out on bond. They've made bond to leave jail or what have you, and they have to show up in court. But during that time, they're free to do whatever they want,
yeah,
and
exactly.
that's when they get into more trouble.
Well,
So
we had a recent incident at my work. So a guy that attacked both myself, first attacked one of the other guards, then tried to attack me with a knife. So he got banned. The police banned him from being within X distance of where I work, my day job. But he still came in. He even came in when the police were there. He didn't care. And then 2 weeks ago, now it turns out he's on bail. He's on parole for after having stabbed three different people over the last 3 years. And then 3 weeks ago, he stabbed someone. And they're going, "Oh, we're going to keep him in till February. Then we'll see what we do." I'm like going like, guy's basically done attempted, like, he's actually stabbed four different people in the last 3 years. He's tried to stab the security guard that tried to stop him, who put his life in the line to stop him. And they're going like, "Oh, we're just going to charge him with intentionally causing physical harm." And, like, years ago, I had a situation which someone tried to stab me in one of the nightclubs that I was working. I moved out of the way, and the guy accidentally stabbed my jacket. And I was talking to Scott Babb from Libra, and I said, "Oh, this is what happened." He goes, "So he tried to kill you." And this is also one of the problems in a sense with my sort of industry, and even with the police, because we see the violence so often, we kind of downgrade it. And I said to Scott, I go, "No, no, no, he just tried to stab me." And Scott goes, "Listen, when someone is trying to stab you, he's trying to kill you." And the thing is, like, I realize, this is the problem. When you deal with violence all the time, not that you don't understand the severity of it, but it becomes so second nature. Like, you see it all the time, like, I don't get the adrenaline rush when someone pulls a knife on me. I should, but and it's not a tough guy thing. I've just done this for so long. Like, and in a sense, like, the video that I sent you with the guys, lunging at me for no reason. You saw there was like zero hesitation. There was just, one quick strike, but it was controlled. Like, I didn't, like, beat the crap out of him. I hit him enough to let him know that I could touch him, and if he continued, I would have done more.
And I'm going to show that video right here, and people need to watch it because this is what happened. And people need to understand that violence occurs in a split
Yeah,
second.
exactly. Yeah, number one, look, violence does occur. Like I always say, number one, like, I don't like the term situational awareness. It's one of the, it's been in the martial arts world and the security industry for so long, and the reason I don't like it is because, one, everyone's trying to sound tactical rather than actually knowing what they're talking about, but also for situational awareness, you actually have to know a lot of, call it, the environment. Like, for example, where I work on my day job, very different to where I work at the bar, right? So what is very normal at my day job is complete lunacy somewhere else. But it's because there's lots of people who take drugs and whatever. Most of them are generally okay. But surprisingly, we have a lot of violence, even though my day job is not the place where you would assume there'd be violence. The other thing is, like, you have to, in a sense, like, know the cool. Then sometimes there's the cultural context, which, you can't cover all your bases. Like, you need to have the encyclopedic knowledge of every culture, every race, every language. Like, the word that, for example, I'll give you an example. A prison term here that will get you killed if you're in prison is if you call someone champ. It's like one of the worst insults that a prisoner can call another prisoner, and they'll shank you for it. Whereas if you said champ outside of that, no one would even know the difference. So imagine if you're a newbie going in, you say that accidentally, you get stabbed. The same thing, you have different cultures will have different point of views. For example, the Vietnamese you don't point your feet at someone. I once worked in a very, very nice, we have RSL, which is a Return Servicemen's League. It's where they, it's like a bar, but they also raise money for charity for widows and orphans of military people.
Right.
One of the chillest place in the world. The thing is, you'll get told off for swearing, which is understandable, but you'll get beaten up for keeping your hat on inside. Like, not not what you would assume would happen in a very chill place. So this is one of the reasons I don't like the term situational awareness. I prefer also, like, if you're constantly just looking for trouble, you're going to be by the end of the day, you're going to be wound up tight, tight. I'm a big believer in being mindful, even though some people don't like the term. Like, you pay attention to everything, but you're not just paying attention to the bad stuff. Beautiful woman walks past, you pay attention. A car with a nice design drives past, you pay attention. You see a bird fly, sitting in the tree, you pay attention. It's a nicer way to pay attention rather than just, like, looking for, like, 27 ninjas in an alleyway. That's never going to happen. That's also one of the big things that I found in the martial arts and security industry. Everyone's training to fight the uber apex predator, and the fact is, the person with the highest skill is not going to be the one attacking you. Like,
Absolutely. And, that,
it's
and you're correct about that. I'm going to interject right now. You're absolutely correct. You can you train people train in martial arts thinking that they're going to find another martial artist.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen. You're going to find somebody that's jacked up on some kind of drug,
yeah,
or
exactly.
or maybe drunk out of their ass. Excuse my language. And you're going to end up fighting one of those. And that's what people need to understand what's going to happen. You train in martial arts to have enough skills for you to be able to go home at night. That's
Yeah,
what it's all.
exactly. Rule number one: we go home safely at the end of the night, or as safe as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
there's this, and like that's the same thing. Like, well, I noticed, I saw an argument online the other day. I'm just going to veer off for a second, but you'll understand the meaning. Someone was viewing one of that old footage of when a Tai Chi master and an Eagle Claw master had a fight in a ring in the 1970s. And they're going, oh, look at it. You look at them. They're just slugging. There's no one using Kung Fu technique. Well, the fact they are using Kung Fu technique, but as opposed to like when a guy who's been training as long as I have or as long as you have go against someone who's not as good, when we're going against someone who's lower skilled, we can use a lot of we can do a joint lock, we can do a grab with, but if we were going head to head, not that we ever would, we wouldn't be trying to block, we'd just be pummeling each other because the skill level is to the point where, like, if I'll be going slow if I'm trying to fancy technique, so. And that's what they don't seem to understand. And it's the same as in a street violence sort of thing. Not that you want to use a fancy technique, but like if you're going up against someone who's not as skilled, not as strong, then you can you can in a sense slow down and block and whatever. Like you notice in the video where the guy takes a lunge at me, I don't, back off. I don't, put my hands up in defensive posture. I did one strike. That was also all that was necessary to in a sense calm the situation. If he put it further, then would do more. It's like, but I've got to like cover my legalities. Also in the fight, I try not to do more than three techniques for both legal reason and the fact, efficiency. I don't know who else I might be dealing with. Um, but yeah, this is where like there's this misunderstanding where someone sees, like it doesn't matter whether it's capoeira, salah, kung fu, or muay thai, and they go, oh, that's not what it looks like when we're training. It's not going to look like when you're training. Fights are messy. The other guy's not going to be coordinated. It's not going to be you do A, B, C. It's like, some people go like, oh, I do a combination, even like boxing. I'll do this, this, and that. Yeah, but the moment you do this, that uppercut's not going to connect because he's not there anymore. So
Absolutely. You're
yeah,
correct.
so
You're
like,
correct. You're
and
correct.
that's and it's very they go, oh, but it works in the ring. It works in the ring, yes, different. Number one, there's gloves, safety parameters. Street is very different. Like this is the other thing is like I always say, like when someone one of the reasons why they go, oh, you know, most bouncers, most like tough guys seem to be really cowardly because we try to avoid fights. I go, we try to avoid fights because we know death is on the table no matter what the fight is. Like, I'm not going to fight you because you think your sports team is better than mine or you like your country or whatever. Like, seriously, because at the end of the day, I don't know what medical condition someone has. You don't know what medical condition I have. You don't know if someone else is going to join in. Sometimes you're like, you don't know if someone's armed. You don't know how far the other guy's going to go. So unless there's a
Ab-
real need for it, you don't do it.
no, you're absolutely correct. And a lot of people think that I've trained so much, I've drank enough liquid courage, I'm going to go out to a bar and I'm going to fight somebody. That's the most idiotic thing that happens, but a lot of people think that way. Um, the best fight I've ever been in is a fight I've never been in, and
Exactly.
that's the way it should be. You do not want to get in a fight because I understand what I can do, I understand what I need to do, and yes, I might get hit. Yes, I understand that. Yes, I understand the issues there, but I just don't want to get involved with any type of issues and consequences that come after that because you might even be on the right and end up causing somebody very much harm. And that's what
Exactly.
people need to understand. Now if it has to happen, Well, it has to happen, and there's no if, buts, or ors in it, you know. But people need to understand that if they're doing martial arts, they're trying to better their life and better themselves. It's going to take a while before you can actually get good at doing it. A lot of individuals think that you can get good at it within 3 months. It's not going to happen. And if and unfortunately, that is the case.
No, like you can get good at kind of the combatives reasonably quickly. And by reasonably quickly, but also that depends on how pressure tested it is and the previous experience of like, what you get, right? Um, and by pretty quickly, I mean 3 to 6 months can get you where you're capable of roughly holding your own against someone who has got absolutely no clue. Right? That's the thing. On the other thing is also, but it's also like you have to get your physicality up, right? It also depends on what system you're training in. Um, like even like myself, like I'm 53, like my body's high mileage. Like there's, I used to be able to do like the full kung fu, spin jump kicks and triple jump kicks. Number one, other than the fact it's impractical in fights, I can't physically do those at the moment, right? Um, but also like, but even like for example, sometimes the younger fighters look, they're incredible shape, but just being, this is the other thing, one of the arguments I always see is like they go, oh, that old martial arts instructor, like he's fat. Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but being with the six pack does not improve your martial arts skill. Look, I'm not saying don't train for the physical stuff, because for me the importance of the physical stuff is, if you're physically strong, you can carry someone to safety, you can perform CPR, etc., etc. The important stuff, which is, call it a sideline of necessity for what we need and what we do, right? But for fighting, you don't really need, number one, a real fight outside of the ring is very rarely going to last that long. If it lasts more than 15 seconds to 30 seconds, you're really doing it wrong. And I
You
don't
know,
say to be a tough guy.
I'm going to interject right there. The FBI says that most street fights last anywhere between 7 to 9 seconds. After that, it goes into 30 seconds. It's usually because somebody jumped in, and after 30 seconds, somebody fell to the ground because they're struggling because of what? They have no conditioning. So,
Yeah. Yeah, like you need the conditioning, because like most people don't realize how, like, you got the adrenaline, the cortisol, you're breathing heavy, and like it's, you're slightly in shock. So yeah, in a sense you gas out really quickly in a fight. So you do need the conditioning, but you don't, like, you've got guys who think that a fight's got to be like, 12 3-minute rounds, right? And Street Fight's nothing like that. It's not like the kung fu movies. As I said, you don't have the 27 ninjas in the alleyway with the Uzi. You don't have the ninja doing the hand stuff beforehand, right? It comes out pretty quickly, and it's usually like, half the time it's not even stuff you're expecting. Like, that's the thing, is like people, just assume. And this is the thing. There's You got your trained professional fighter, and then you got the street thug who trains, but not necessarily in the way that, kind of me and you would train. Like they'll do some shadow boxing, in front of the mirror. Of course, look, especially if you're a professional criminal, you'll train something, right? But
yeah,
like the majority you get is what Mark McYoung calls the chronic criminal class. They're not actually really good at being criminals, but they just continue doing it because they don't know anything else to do, and also because they figured out that they haven't actually got the consequences from it. It's
yeah,
like, for example, lately we've had lots of machete incidents in my state. Now the thing is, not one of them actually knows how. Like they're basically, they weren't Filipino guys. They weren't from a Mexican machete tradition. They were just, or an African, machete tradition, or sword fighting tradition. They basically bought a cheap, machete from Timu or from a hardware store, and then just basically tried to swing at each other, like, and try to avoid being cut. There's like no skill. But the thing is, just because there's no skill doesn't mean you're not going to get hurt when the machete connects.
absolutely. You see that, and you said an actually straight point right there to the issue of martial arts and the issue of self-defense. People think that everybody out there is not going to, it's going to be trained, is going to be proficiently trained. Absolutely not. But if somebody gets a $12 blade from the gasoline station, it's going to swing you, and if they connect, it's going to connect. People need to understand that will to do something is actually more than actual technical skill to do something. Because if you will, you'll never throw that punch, you'll never throw that swing, you never defend against a knife. So you have to understand that when you train, you have to will it to become part of you for you to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. It's like the incident that you saw that I sent you the video clip where I picked up the bollard now. So I'll give background to it. I refused entry to a guy for wearing tracksuits. I wasn't rude about it. So, it's a nightclub. You go to a nightclub dressed well. I said, listen, go get changed. And when you come back, if there's a line, I'll let you jump the line. The guy got offended. Right. I don't think I said anything wrong. He started going, like, my tracksuit's more expensive than how much you make. And I said, look, personally, I don't care. You can insult me as much as you want. But if you want to get in, go get changed. I'll let you in. So he's pulled out a knife, which is just outside of the view of the security footage. Right. And as you saw, I didn't yell. I calmly picked up a bollard, flicked it over my shoulders in angle one, like you would with the screamer stick. And then as soon as I came close, he ran off. Right. Now, if he still stayed there with the knife, I'm sorry, I have to hit him. Because if he stabs me, he's going to kill me. There was also a few women and a few guys standing at the same spot. If he stabbed one of them, but someone goes oh, but it was so matter of fact and so businesslike. I'm sorry, that's what violence is, especially from a professional point of view. I don't have an emotional content. I don't hate the guy. I'm not angry with the person. You're trying to stab me, and the fact is, I've got to be calm. And this is the thing, especially in violence, you've got to be as calm as possible. You've got to start calculating what you've got to do, because as we've discussed also other times, at the end of the day, you go over the top, you go to jail. And then there's the times that you should be talking and the times that you should be acting. And if you're talking when you should be acting, you get killed. If you're acting when you should be talking, you go to jail. So you've got to know the balance.
Absolutely. That's some good phrase. That's a good analogy. Paulo, that people do not understand the severity and the quickness of an actual chaotic situation, how it can develop. And it's pretty fast. And if you can talk, I know that there are differences right now. You're talking about that in your country. It's very much prevalent that there's people with machetes taking swings at each other. That's kind of, it appears in areas. It's not seen as much, but yeah, the knives are seen. Now you're seeing a lot more of it in New York, and you start seeing it a lot more everywhere else. Knife fighting has always been prevalent here in the United States, especially in this area. But you don't see machetes being pulled out, even though here in Texas, you have a law. They just made a law that you can carry any size blade. So you can carry a machete if you want. But, you don't see that many attacks.
Well, and people might get annoyed when I say it. I actually think, an armed society is a polite society. Because this is the thing. If, as I said before, consequences. The thing is, the guy with the machete isn't going to pull it out on the other guy that also has a weapon, that he knows has a weapon. Right? That's where, this is the, when there's consequences, you misbehave, you'll get, you might, this the fuck around and find out, excuse my language. Whereas one of the problems here we have is, in fact, a lot of times when someone gets arrested, they don't understand there's consequences, or when they kill someone, they're smiling as if they played a computer game. They don't understand the consequences. They don't even understand the consequences till someone hits them, and then as soon as someone hits them back, they're shocked. You know, I had one guy take a swing. He goes, "Oh, if you take a swing back, I'm going to call your boss and have you fired." I'm like going, "What mental gymnastics are you doing here?" You know, um, so in a sense, I don't actually think banning the weapon. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people like to ban stuff, but the fact is this: look, you ban the machete, the guy goes get to get the but the guy that you keep putting out on bail goes gets a hammer. You ban a hammer, he's going to get something else. This is the reality of it. Like
And that's
there's
what you're saying is starting to happen here. We have to be careful with here in the States. Here in the States, I don't know about Australia. There's not that many mental hospitals anymore. We have a lot of people here with
yes,
mental
same.
conditions. Okay, I don't know what's happening in Australia, but here is you do not have that many people. You do not have mental hospitals anymore like you did before, like in the 80s and early 90s, and they removed all those. And we need people with mental health is a huge problem,
Yeah.
and it's sad. It's sad because you see that throughout the states, and I'm pretty sure you're seeing.
Yeah, we removed those as well. We used to have mental hospitals. We had, I think, we had two big ones here in the state. Now we've got none. Where they've got like short-term stay at some of the hospitals, so they've got like one wing, right? But like you see lots of people that obviously have mental health issues are on the streets, and then like because they're on the streets, they're not even getting the medication, so they end up taking street drugs, which
Yeah,
just creates a bigger problem, right?
absolutely, absolutely,
Uh,
and that's right there. What you just said is exactly what's happening here. So I think that pandemic is worldwide.
Yeah, like here, I think there's a word for it which I can't remember. I have I have a bad habit of I can't remember words which I just think are silly. Um, basically with someone who has a mental health issue, they don't like putting them into the system or keeping them locked up because they think it interferes with their choice of actions or their agency. That's the word I was looking for. Person has to have agency. So like for example, if a person who has a mental illness wants to walk out into the traffic in the freeway, you can't legally physically stop him from doing it because he's got agency. Even though he might cause himself or somebody else harm, the law states that you're not allowed to interfere with his agency, which I think is ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry, if you see a toddler about to put their hand on a burning flame, you stop them. But now it's considered if you stop them, it's a bad thing. It has just gotten to a ridiculous point.
We've somehow along the way we've elected individuals that have no common sense,
Yeah.
and those common senses you can see it resonate in many countries, and everybody's kind of it's funny, Paulo, but you're kind of seeing the same pattern throughout different countries.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
I don't know if it was a planned conditioning or just something that occurred by condition. To me, it's
Well,
kind of like, but it's sad because you have the same kind of laws in different countries, and there's no actual conveying from one to another.
we have a party here which is called the Greens Party that originally started off as an environmentally friendly party, but now seems to be very pro-Marxism, right? Now, the hilarious part, one of the ministers from the Greens Party a couple of weeks ago says, "Oh, I don't want someone who goes and steals 10 times to be arrested because maybe he has a reason to steal." Now, the hilarious part, I heard one of your American senators say the exact same thing in Chicago.
That's what I'm
So, like,
saying.
yeah, like
There's
whether it's planned or not, I don't like doing the conspiracy theory, but like I have a theory that like, listen, if the exact same conversation is being held at three different places, there's a really good chance it's connected.
absolutely, absolutely, you're absolutely correct. But getting back into the violence in the streets, what is the actual right now the most common violence that against another person that's occurring? The most common attack.
At
What
the
is it?
moment, it is knife attacks and machete attacks and gang violence, and we're getting lots of home invasions from the exact same gangs that handed the violence. Right. So the most common is the machete attacks. Um, we get lots of kitchen, even like a lot of the for example, a lot of the shops have banned selling kitchen knives, but they're still available. That's the fact. Like, I'm sorry, if you have a knife in your kitchen because you're cooking, someone's going to be able to grab it. It's just simple. Um, but it's just random. This is the thing. Is like the stand. Okay, violence is never actually random, right? If you actually pay attention, no matter, even though just as you said, it just comes out of nowhere. We're getting a lot more of just random attacks for what seems like no reason. But like I said, as I said, with the awareness thing, number one, this is also one of the things that I think is missing when it's someone who has a mental illness. So the average person, when they're going to commit a crime, like for example, you've probably seen before someone, if a criminal is about to hit you, and one of the things they do is what I call the witness check. They'll look around first before hitting you. So as soon as you're talking to someone who starts looking around wildly, checking if they've got witnesses, they're going to hit you. Right? But the mentally ill ones don't do that. They don't do the witness check. They'll just walk up and stab someone. It made the news. Some woman was walking, from work, and another woman randomly ran up and just, stabbed her 2 times. There'd be no interaction between the two.
Right there are pearls. The witness check, when people are about to hit you, they start looking around and they hit
Yeah.
you. And the one that's not right in the head just comes around and hits you.
Exactly.
And those, as a security guard, as a doorman, as a executive protection specialist, those are things that only people in those fields have seen, have understood, because a normal person doesn't know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is I always go number one, you'll actually, if there's a distinctive trouble heading your way, right? Usually they'll give a sign. I always used to use the example of, let's say, for example, you go shopping, walk into your car, and you see someone standing in the parking lot. He doesn't have his keys in his hands. He doesn't have shoppings, or she, either one, right? And they're not walking towards a car. They're not walking away from a car. That gives you a whole bunch of information. Number one, they're probably waiting to mug someone. So as I said, it's not doesn't necessarily come, but most people miss a lot of the what's going on, and plus they just naturally assume that everyone's okay, right? So not that I said that you go take start a fight with the guy. You retreat to a safety area, right? But that's the same thing. Like I said, the witness check. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. You'll also see, for example, someone will do people, especially unless you're carrying a dedicated shift, you notice police and military don't constantly check where their weapons are. But criminals do, unless they've been professionals for a long time, and they've got it down to kind of a sense an art form. For example, the guy that did the stabbing at my work a couple of weeks ago. Number one, we knew he was always armed when he walked past, and we were always ready when he came past, because he had this habit. He'd always have his hand inside his tracksuit where he's holding the knife, right? A lot of times when someone's carrying a loose weapon, they always do a weapon check to make sure that that's where it is. So you'll suddenly say, if a person carries a knife there, they always want to make sure that the knife's in the same spot where they left it, right? Especially before they go to grab it. Or you have the witness check, and you've got a whole bunch of other kind of tells that someone will do.
Absolutely. And you need to understand that those little signs, those little telltale signs of an attack, they occur all the time. And like I said, those that have experienced it are able to tell what they are.
Exactly.
Follow is very, very important what you're saying.
You know, and the thing, like I work with the guard, and he's still new to the field, so he keeps on like thinking some of my stuff seems like ESP, right? He goes like, "How do you know?" Try and go like, I can't actually explain it just because I've been in the rough industry for so long. So like, you know, sometimes like I'll go like I'll just be standing there, I look at him, I go, "Trouble's coming," and at first he used to think that I was crazy, and then trouble would come around the corner somehow. And like then like lately he's actually doing the same thing. He'll look at me and he goes, "Trouble's coming," and then trouble will come around the corner. Like, you know, but like, and I can't actually explain whether it's, you know, yeah, because we're paying attention to everything. You know, your subconscious starts paying attention to like, you know, reflections from across the road and like in a whole bunch of stuff. So then your subconscious makes all the, you know, puts all the data together and like, you know, tells you to get ready. And other times, but like this comes from a lot of experience. You deal with enough troublesome, you know, things, you start going like, okay, you in a sense, even though you don't consciously go, "Oh, this is a precursor to a problem existing," you know, generally what starts happening is your subconscious starts, you know, remembering that, like, okay, every time before a fight happened, you know, like I'll give you an example. Sometimes, you know, well, you know, like certain songs, you know, come on in the club. And like for example, you know, the old, you know, song Sabina from the Rocky movie, Eye of the Tiger. As soon as that comes on, every single man in the bar starts like, doing shadow boxing, right? Some other songs, as soon as the song comes on, you know trouble's gonna like, you know, trouble's brewing, right? Sometimes like also like, ridiculous as it is, um, if there's porn playing in the background in clubs, like I usually get, you know, if I work in a club where they play it, I get to turn it off for the simple reason there's always violence when that happens.
Absolutely, because there's certain sounds
Yeah,
agitate,
you know,
aggravate them.
yeah. Like I was working in a club, and I only found out this by accident. I was working in a club somewhere in the early '90s, and we couldn't understand why there was like that night was like, there was like fights every 2 minutes. And then like I noticed one of my guards, he's standing there like staring at the wall, and I'm going like, I walk up and go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "There's this, you know, porn being played on the walls." You know, they'd use some, you know, like the camera, the lighting guy decided to like to do a trick. It turns out like subconsciously people were picking it up, and like it was raising the aggression level. So we got him to turn the thing off. Violence stopped. You know, like the thing is, look, people will go like you're wrong, but like, you know, it's if you can't get the tension out one way, you get it out a different way. You know, so and also like sometimes you'll see like, you know, when there's gang activity, like you start noticing when gangs start moving into it, particularly before there's going to be violence, you know, they come in, you'll start noticing the gangs, they're milling around. You'll start noticing, you know, like that, like if you actually pay attention, that weapons start getting, you know, you start seeing that they start hiding weapons around the place. So you know trouble's come.
Yeah,
um,
you know, because
and
and that's
as I said, I've done this for so long that, like, you know, I have to write a book that thick with all the stuff you'd have to notice. That's why, like, luckily, like, the subconscious kind of like does a lot of the work for you. You know?
I'm glad that you're out there, and I'm glad that you're able to teach people to look at this, and I'm glad you're sharing your experiences because there's a lot of people that are watching this that do not understand how violence occurs, and you said a lot of great points. I want to thank you for sharing because that's
So I appreciate it.
very important. Those that were involved in that type of business, the security business, will be able to understand it and tell it and pass it forward. So I want to thank you for that.
No
I want to,
worries.
and I want to thank you again for coming on and
Thank you
telling
for
us.
inviting.
And we're running out of time, but you know it's always a pleasure talking to you. We'll continue, my brother. But
No worries.
I want you to stay safe. I want you to be safe, and everybody out there that's watching, stay safe, be safe, and I want to place the video against it at the end for everybody to watch. And Paolo, you stay safe out there.
Always, brother.
All right, my brother. And
See you. Have a good
out
one.
there, You all stay safe, be safe, and God bless you all. Until next time. Peace. Have you ever wondered about what happens in a martial arts studio? Well, you start right away by setting goals, building determination, gaining focus, building skills, all while becoming more fit, gaining confidence, and learning self-defense. Buitron Academy is a school where attitude meets aptitude. So give us a call at 956-401-4868.